Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 125 with Sung Rhee, CEO of Optimal, a platform that helps students make more informed college decisions. So really great hearing the story of how Optimal came to be and how they are working to help students understand more about earnings outcomes and things of the like and student reviews. But the best part of this episode by far was just having a brief portion of it talking about kind of working to dismantle sort of the mystique of institutional prestige, the Ivies out there and other name brand institutions that people just assume are by default better, but really trying to be informed by the actual data and understand, what better options might be out there for students, and certainly, inclusive of shorter credentials and boot camps that are out there as well. So we spend a little bit of time talking about that as well. So really great conversation. It's a shorter one, but really appreciate Sung's time and appreciate you for listening to this episode number 125 with Sung Rhee. We are here to talk through something that we've been covering quite a bit on the podcast, but always deserves further conversation, and all the ways that folks are trying to address kind of the affordability and college choice kind of dilemmas that a lot of students are facing to make sure they choose the right program at the right university and get a good return on that investment of their time and money. So we will start out as we always do. Sung, if you want to introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your professional journey and how you get to be where you are today.
Thanks for having me. I started my career after college at Microsoft, being a software engineer, and I eventually gravitated towards management, developing different types of consumer-focused software. And I always had an inkling to start something new, do something different. So I ended up venturing out after about 10 years at Microsoft. I started a company that was a venture-backed company and wireless software startup. I sold that after 3 years, and then just right about then, I really wanted to get an understanding of how money's made on the internet. And so, back then it was all about PCs and networks and traditional, software. That was kind of the big rage. But the internet was really coming into focus at that time. This is like back in 2000. So I ventured out, started a company, and I started just building websites and trying to figure out like how people make money on the internet. And I started doing affiliate marketing. And it was because that was really the easiest way to do, build websites and try to figure out how to monetize your traffic. And eventually we kind of grew that, and I did that in various different industries, but just eventually started focusing on one segment, one industry, and that's education. And I didn't really think much of it. We were doing mostly generating leads for for-profit institutions, and it was great. And we're generating a lot of leads, making a lot of money. But then we realized, like, wow, this is like a little bit messed up. There are a lot of problems. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of just false advertising, false promises being made to students, and the students were kind of being asked to take on a huge loan and a debt to fund their education without a promise of any kind of substantial return. So we were like, wow, okay, this is a problem. We can't continue to just do this. And so we started gravitating towards building websites and publishing information that are useful for students, as opposed to just kind of doing affiliate marketing, catering towards these schools. And so we launched what is one of the largest review platform for these types of for-profit institutions and vocational school. It's called Grad Reports. And we started publishing a lot more information about just about schools and just helping people make better choices. And it became pretty clear to us that there is just lot of lack of transparency about how much schools cost, a lot of misinformation out there, as well as there's a lot of inertia around how people choose colleges. Focus on reputation and passion and some of the other factors that basically we're starting to see a divergence in terms of what kind of investment students are having to make to get a college degree and what kind of returns they're getting, and in terms of like what they're able to make, and, in terms of salary, career, and finding the right career path and so forth. And the recent study from UW, University of Washington, is showing that around 53% of recent grads are either unemployed or underemployed. And so I think that's a pretty big number in terms of people who's been trained and spent 4 years or plus in college education, not being in a career that is what they were trained to focus on, or the intended areas of study. And so what we set out to do is really kind of focus on that information, providing much greater insights to how students, what the student outcome is once they graduate, and how much they should be expected to pay for schools, um, and just really a lot of information that is in some places kind of not necessarily in other places, but really hard to get to. And so we try to aggregate all of that information, um, and provide it to students so they can make informed choices without like spending too much of their energy doing these types of research.
Right. Yeah. And that's great. I mean, yeah, just, you know, I kind of said it through a lot of these conversations, like just giving students more information, more options, and like they feel as though they're uh, making the best informed choice versus like what you said. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but like making choices based on just like, prestige, reputation, like just, what are the household names, or what is just like, oh, this is a school close to me or something. Like I'll just go there versus like, well, you could go somewhere else. They have a different program or focus, modality that you could take advantage of and those sort of things. But um, and I guess just to clarify, because I know like you're sort of like aggregating this information that could be in disparate places, and certainly there's a lot of uh, sometimes like limits on what a college is going to choose to share about themselves on their own website. But because are students able to like did they submit information or their experiences or their reviews on your platform? Because just talking through, I think the next question I wanted to get to is just talking a little bit more about what your platform Optimal does, and sort of like what the experience is that somebody going there.
Yeah, sure. A bulk of our information does come from other data sources, because there's just a lot more information out there, a lot more accurate information about what kind of salaries that students make, how much debt they incur, and things like that. And that information is out there. It's just kind of hard to access. But what we do is we do provide a lot of qualitative information on our platform. We allow people to submit reviews of their colleges, their college experience, and it's anecdotal, obviously, but it's pretty powerful, right? Like I remember a long time ago, when we first started, um, this person was just completely distraught. This, I think it was a he. He wrote this long review about a college, about a for-profit institution, and and he was, he basically had spent like 2 years or whatnot, spent tens of thousands of dollars, and he was basically out of luck because of some technicality, and this institution wouldn't let him graduate, wouldn't let him complete. And so it's, basically you're stuck in this like the worst situation, where not only do you not have a degree and not have the credential, but you're heavily in debt. Um, and they were just completely distraught, and they wrote this like long, like a page's worth of like their personal experience on our review platform. And I just remember thinking, I mean, that really stuck with me. It's like, wow, people need to be able to see this type of, what other students are experiencing, what problems they're facing, and what are the types of things that they need to avoid to be able to make smarter decisions. And so, yeah, I mean, you get a lot of there's data, right, and you get a lot of data out there, but our platform, we have this type of really in-depth, qualitative, personal experiences that could really also affect how people think about their decision-making process and how they go about um, choosing colleges.
And really, this question is kind of just at the core of everything. So kind of just take it as you will. But you know, yeah, you have this quantitative pieces, earnings and debt and different things like that, as well as those anecdotal pieces, kind of qualitatively from students themselves. But say a prospective student, walks up to you and with everything that you know and the work that you do and everything, how do you think students right now should be making decisions about their, higher education broadly, whatever form that might take? Like, what are the pieces that they should be looking for to help inform their decisions?
Obviously, a lot of it is very personal, and again, for traditional students, we're talking about 18-year-olds making decisions about sort of what's going to happen with the rest of their lives, and having to make that decision at that point in time in their lives. Um, I mean, I certainly had no idea what the hell I wanted to do with my life when I was 18. So it's a daunting task and a daunting challenge. What I would the advice that I would give is to seek out, just be more knowledgeable, right? And so, for example, some people might gravitate towards the name recognition and brand of the school. Some people might gravitate towards where they're located, the school size, things like that. There's, people just all have different preferences. What I would say is, I would say get more information. Figure out what major you want to, what you want to study, what you think you may want to study down the road, and see how students fare, what their outcome is, what kind of jobs do they get, how much do they make out of that, um, and uh, and just be more informed. I mean, it's obviously it's going to be the decision making process is going to be part passion and part rational, kind of practical decision making. I mean, that's just how human beings make decisions all the time, all for everything anyway. But I would say, just, there is more information out there. Go seek it out. I mean, it's a 4+ year, 100,000 plus dollars worth of investment that you're making. To spend more time on understanding what the outcome is going to be, than you would have done otherwise. One of the biggest comments that I hear from people looking at our website, grad reports, because what we did was we published rankings based on major um, and salary outcome for each college. And the biggest comment that I hear is like, "Wow, if I had this information back when I was making this decision, I would have made a different choice." Right? So my advice is, yeah, just get more information. Learn more, because it will influence your thought process differently the more you know.
Right. And it can even be that just makes you feel better about the choice you were going to make anyway. Like that could be an outcome. But uh,
Absolutely, yes.
yeah, because I think too, like what you're saying is like there's a lot that goes into it. Because if it was just if everyone was just the rational being and just making a pure cost benefit analysis, then everybody would like major in petroleum engineering or something. It's like, oh, like, well, you get the most money if you are a petroleum engineer, so like everybody
Right.
should just do that, right? And it's like, well, no, like not everybody's interested in it, or maybe it's not something that they're good at. Because that's what I think too is like on that emotional passion side. It's like, what are you good at? What are you interested in? And then the other part is like, okay, yeah, choose like the most affordable, best institution that has like a good program in terms of like all those different aspects that make a good college experience of like, yeah, you're going to get good involvement opportunities and internships and faculty interactions and all those things. And some of that is just going to be informed by like those qualitative pieces where people can share that like, yeah, that was the case. It was really welcoming and, great environment. I had all these opportunities or something. But so yeah, it's the idea that's like just really uh, making it in like a time and space where you don't feel like you have to rush yourself. Like you can take your time to build up that knowledge base and comparison shop and read through things and reach out to people and Yeah, all of that. So
I see. I see. It's really interesting. I just, I have two kids. One is just graduating from college. The other one just started her first year in college. And so I have experience kind of going through, college choice, a college selection process. And I hear anecdotally from a lot of their friends and how they go about making decisions about the college, about, their college choices and everything. And yeah, I mean, so much of their decision making is instinctual, intuitive. It's like how their college visit went, how the campus feels, the speaker at the presentation and everything. And that's, I think that's fine. You have to be able to visualize you being able to attend a particular college. But yeah, I think I would say there isn't enough attention being paid to what happens afterwards. What there's tens of thousands of students that have gone through this path before me. If I choose this particular school, what happened to them? What's their outcome like? And so, and we're definitely delivering a lot of that type of data, where and that is becoming much more is easily accessible, right? And so for students to do just a little bit of extra research, and really take that into account in their overall decision making. I don't think that's a big ask. And I think it will help kind of the bigger problem that we're facing, this kind of growing gap between, skills needed for, full employment and, and what people were trained, in college, and kind of, this the 53% underemployment figures that we were talking about.
and that other piece too that we had mentioned about the prestige and name brand kind of institutions and everything, because that would also be the rational thing. It's like, well, of course I'm going to go there because it's just like the best known, it's going to have a lot of transactional value and everything. But they're obviously not the best in all regards, or like going to be the best fit for everyone. So I'm just curious, like from your point of view, because this isn't necessarily something that we've talked a lot about with others around college choice, but like that like allure of the prestige and like your perceptions on that, and how to maybe like push against that to allow at least people again to kind of just like look at other options and consider them, versus just defaulting to just like, well, I've got to go to NYU because reasons, just because. Like
Right, right.
curious on your point of view there.
No, I think that's a great. I think that's a great issue. I mean, I think great point that you bring. I think in the old days, and there's a lot of sort of the tradition is, oh yeah, if you go to a prestigious school, you're set, right? That if you go to Harvard or MIT, oh you're totally set, set for life, right? Um, that's definitely not true anymore. Um, and I will say unequivocally that what the data tells us is that what you major in is much more important than what school you attend, right? So if like as a college student, as a student, if you're kind of like sitting here, grappling with decisions, like spend more time and energy focusing on what you're going to major in, as opposed to and what you're going to study, as opposed to what school you're going to go to, right? Um, because that makes a huge much more there's much greater sort of discrepancy and diversity in how people are financially compensated after college depending on their major, and that discrepancy is just uh, uh, bifurcating even further than it had been in the past. um, and so I think once people kind of realize that, just because you went to Harvard, if you, studied like, film production, yeah, you're going to be in the same boat as everybody else, right? You're not going to make a lot of money and you'll struggle. And maybe some, few of you will break through and, hit it big, but just like, it's just a really, really tough major, to be rewarded financially. And same can be said for a lot of other majors. And so, I think just being recognizing that there's greater importance that one should put into what you study versus where you study, I think will help kind of alleviate some of this sort of myth and some of this traditional like inclination towards reputation, because Yeah, I mean, obviously, you want to go to a school that it gets recognized and whatever, just because it makes you feel good. But it's like it may not give you the life that you want. It may not give you the result that you want just because you went to that school. And so, being very thoughtful about what you're going to study and what you're going to major in, I think is going to is important. It's going to take on greater importance as our economy becomes much more diverse and very specialized and very deep and focused. And there's a lot of automation happening, where a lot more thoughtful decision making and critical problem solving is required early on in their careers. I would say that's going to be kind of the dynamic that plays out, in terms of the disparity in what salaries people make out of college based on the major, and the impact that has on sort of people's reliance on reputation.
Right. Well, and I know too, like from my upbringing through like my master's program studying college and college student development, like adding on like yet another piece, it's like it matters less where you go, but what you study, and then like on top of that, like what you do while you're in college. Like you can get really involved in network and build mentorships and internships and all this stuff. Like you can maximize that time and really have amazing outcomes no matter where you go. Like those opportunities are really out there. And
Right, right.
certainly also like if you're going to like a Harvard or any of these places, like, yeah, sure. Again, like there's a lot of like instant name recognition there, but you're often paying a pretty penny for it. Like you're paying a higher cost purely just for that sort of upmark of the brand and everything. So, yeah, all again, and really important things to consider. And, again, if people are like doing their homework and that ultimately is what is the most important thing to them, and they've, done a lot of searching and everything, then that is also fine. But just making sure people don't just default to that. Um, but I
Right.
think, a lot of what you said there, centering on like kind of just what the economy is going to be looking at moving towards the future. There's been really a big impact on people engaging with more short-term credentials and, uh, you know, allowing that for them to, uh, engaging with that allows for them to pivot quicker, build kind of greater career resiliency, and just all these different kind of skills and everything. So I'm just curious, kind of in the mix with all of this, like, what do you think the impact of these short-term credentials has been and kind of will continue to be?
I think it's a great direction that we're heading, to kind of focus on some of these short-term credentialing. There are a lot of coding boot camps and things like that that's out there. We have a product called SwitchUp that we publish student reviews of coding bootcamp experiences, and the data also shows that coding bootcamps are highly very has a very high ROI in terms of placing students after they graduate into a high-paying job in that field that they studied in. And so I think that's a great example of something that was done recently that really changed the kind of the landscape of how people are training for a long-term career that's away from traditional colleges and universities. That's been very successful. We see also, the likes of Google and IBM and companies coming up with their own sort of credentialing mechanism to train people to uh, a different types of skill set. And quite frankly, a lot of these things, being a UX designer or product manager and things like that, you really can't get that kind of training in college. Just the colleges don't offer degrees. Like not enough colleges offer degrees in these fields that are so critical and so necessary for us, for our economy to continue to grow. And so we're seeing these institutions filling the gap, and I think it's just fantastic. To be able to take these highly educated, learnable, group of people, and training them on a very specific skill set that's going to be highly relevant to the overall value creation process of our economy. Yeah, so I think it's a great direction, and I hope, and I anticipate that we'll continue to see more of that being successful down the road.
Yeah, definitely agree. Just as really good, affordable, flexible, kind of dynamic and responsive educational options. And yeah, like you said, stuff, through like Google and Amazon and things like that, where they're like just saying like, we need people with these skills here. Boot camp, like help train people with these, and we'll be able to really consider them like they're skills that are hard to come by otherwise. So yeah, so all really good stuff. So as we wind down, I always love to ask any resources like books, podcasts, websites, anything that you would like to share. Anything from your own platforms or elsewhere that we can include in the show notes.
I'll shamelessly promote our platform because I think we do have a great resource that's not readily accessible elsewhere out there, and grad reports where we publish all the salaries for all the different majors, um, and broken down by majors and colleges. And so if you want to go to NYU and want to study film production, you kind of you can see what you can expect to make out of that experience and how that compares to other colleges and other film production majors in other colleges. And so that's a great way to compare and really kind of think about the outcome in terms of the major and college combination. Um, Switch Up is also great for figuring out what are the great coding boot camps and um, ways to learn new skill set once when you have a very very specific sense for something that's very technology driven um, job that you're going after. And so I think those are two good resources that for people to consider as they kind of think about their choices and their decision making. So yeah, no, I absolutely I absolutely endorse our platform to everybody, to any of my friends and families making decisions. Like I always tell people, it's like, hey, that's fine. You can look at U.S. News and World Reports and see where your school's ranking at, and do all of that sort of reputation driven thing. But just make sure you see what the outcome is going to be before you make the final decision.
Well, with that as well, we always end with final thoughts, calls to action, anything that you'd like to wrap the episode with on this topic.
If I were to give advice, and this is a slightly different, perhaps a little adjacent to kind of the specific topic that that we were talking about, but I get asked a lot, what advice would you give to students? What advice would you give to students, making this decision and trying to figure this out? Um, and and really kind of the advice that I would give that I think is more that is pertinent is perhaps slightly different. The first order advice that I would say is focus on what you're good at and try to figure out what you're good at and what you want to be good at, right? And kind of let that be the guiding principle for making a decision. Um, I and I guess it's sort of along with that, the advice that I give is like, don't necessarily just follow your passion. Kind of be smart about like figuring out what you're good at, and then figure out how you can use that to be of service to others and add value. Um, and I think if you kind of take a longer, broader approach to life, I think people will end up with a better outcome taking that sort of a high level approach than really just trying to kind of figure out like how do I maximize and how do I just go and get the best, go to the most reputable college just so you can have that name recognition and be kind of myopic in that way.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that you did and taking some time out and just spending more time on this relevant topic. So we'll have ways to connect with you and the work that you're doing and all that we mentioned in the show notes as usual. But just thanks again so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's this was fun. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.